athletic shirt, just scrubbing it.
Huddle around as Climbing the Pocket Network presents Jayson and the boys talking everything Minnesota Vikings. Watch the countdown timer.
Away we go again. Lost like I'm lost on purpose. If found, please return to. Girl, don't you know I'm lost on the road? I've been here before. When I get home, girl, don't you know I'm lost on the road? I've been here before. When I get home, my vision blurry, I'm paying the cost. I'm not enough. In fact, it's even better when you're not involved. When I miss your call, I feel that I evolve. Cause at your mention, I am more dependent than a college student on their parents or an old person on their pension. Not to mention, when you hit me on WhatsApp without attention and a bad booty bitch walks in, she looks tempting. Look, my Achilles heel is when I say what I feel, you say, baby, come home, and I don't think that I will, cause all this motherfucking stress is gonna get me killed. Woo. Girl, don't you know I'm lost on the road? I've been here before. When I get home, girl, don't you know I'm lost on the road? I've been here before. When I get home,
Huddle around as Climbing the Pocket Network presents Jayson and the boys talking everything Minnesota Vikings.
No, I can't play these games. No, you can't disrespect and call me names. Sending me signals like you about to switch lanes. Well, go on, do your thing. Go on, do your thing. I mix champagne and propane, get lit. I'm trying to forget all the things that you said, all the things that we did. Girl, don't you know I'm lost on the road? I've been here before. When I get home, girl, don't you know I'm lost on the road? I've been here before. When I get home, watch the breakdown. And I get home when I get home. You just gonna act like we normal now. Good luck. Don't you try to call me with that bullshit, telling me you're sorry. You act too quick. That's somebody else's problem now. You're somebody else's problem now. Don't you try to call me with that bullshit, telling me you're sorry. You act too quick. That's somebody else's problem now. You're somebody else's problem now.
And we're back, gentlemen. Here we go. I mean, it's been far too long. We got our man, the good doctor, Eric. You're back. We've missed you terribly these last few weeks. We've got ourselves a slot on Big Easy's Media Tuesdays. How you doing? How you been? How are things?
I've enjoyed watching the Vikings the last 2 weeks. That's been a good time.
Are you sure?
Dalvin Cook is an amazing player. Now though, I feel like we're reaching a territory though where the last couple weeks have sort of gotten the Vikings in a bad position.
Oh, well, I think we're going to have to talk about that a little bit. And my man, Clamps, wide receiver 1, DB1. What's going on, Myles? How you doing?
I'm good. Just getting back in the groove.
All right. That's what we like.
Like Eric said, I think I'm going to have to agree with Eric, though. So I know Flip doesn't agree with anything Eric says, so I'm excited to see that.
Or anyone else for that matter.
Myles, this is a new setup. You got a new room. You finished that extension to the house.
No. So this is just my basement, but I finally got a desk to work in. Like Jayson, I'll probably put some stuff on the wall, but my treadmill's repping me.
There we go.
I like it.
And the only man that is worthy of having his name under his face right now, well, man, Flip. How we doing?
Oh, doing well, man. Out on the West Coast, it got a little chilly here. Got that down to like 60 degrees, so having to deal with that. But it's always fun to be doing the live show, boys.
It's snowing here right now, Flip.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's 70 in Ohio or so.
Yeah, it's pretty warm out there.
We get to watch Maction right now on ESPN in the background, so I can't hate that much.
Nick, can you hear us?
Hey, how's it going?
Wow.
The other guy's on. I don't see anyone.
We did it. We've got Nick. We can see him. We can hear him. He's here on time for introductions and everything. Nick, my man, talk to the people. Tell them how you're doing. What you been up to? Can he still hear us? Nope. Adjusting the camera. Adjusting it. Nicholas, can you hear us?
The only thing I did is I clicked the link from the DMs on my phone. So
okay, but are you in?
I don't know.
Can you
Maybe
hear
I'm
everyone?
clicking the wrong link or something.
No, you're in. You're in the right place. You're just the only one on Skype because you dialed in last.
Because you're fifth.
Yeah.
This is Dave. For those that don't know, I'm producing the show, and we're having technical difficulties that Nick cannot hear anybody but me.
Okay. Well, tell Nick to introduce himself, David.
Introduce yourself, Nick.
Hey, I'm Nick. You might know me from Twitter, I guess. I'm also a Vikings fan, enjoying this 2-game winning streak, so excited to talk about it.
All right. Well, let's get into this in as awkward a fashion as possible. We won't put Nick right back on the spot. Eric, you've been making a lot of people really angry, including Dalvin Cook's agent. Talk to me about
friend Zach.
Your good friend Zach is upset with you. He seems to feel like every time Dalvin does something good, he needs to remind you about it. So talk to me about what's been going on with these Vikings over the last couple of weeks. You weren't here to reap the benefits of actually prognosticating that the Vikings could beat Green Bay. When you were positive, we gave you some shout outs. Flip quickly said enough of that. And then stomped all over your good name.
No, oh come on.
Me and Flip are in such a good spot right now. Even this evil can't knock it down a little bit, okay, Jayson? Like we're in agreement on almost everything, and I feel like that's a singular point. So
I know it's freaking me out. I'm not gonna lie. We have Flip and Eric agreeing about things, and so the Vikings, they've won a couple of games. Mike Zimmer is locked in. Let us all know we are a run-first team.
He's been saying
what
that.
does this do for the Vikings as we move forward? Because you've said these wins have set us back. We've got Dalvin in the MVP conversation, apparently. Yeah, what's up? What have your thoughts on the Vikings changed?
There's a huge financial incentive for Mr. Hiller to want Dalvin Cook to win the MVP, obviously, given probably money wise what Dalvin wins and as an extension what he ends up winning. So I get his approach, but when you look at the league, the obvious silliness, of course, is how brilliant Dalvin's been, and the Vikings are still 3-5. And even to the degree that Alvin Kamara, who has been really the only weapon for a Saints team that's 6-2 right now, coming off of a big win against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a sweep of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That to me is I think where if you're going to look for a running back, that's where you look. Dalvin's been amazing, but the hard part about all of this is now what do you do if you're the Minnesota Vikings? I've been trying to hold on to our simulations, but basically the Vikings are as likely to pick in the middle of the first round now as they are to pick at the front end, and so you're back to sort of square one with Kirk. And I know he's played okay the last 2 weeks. But that's really the most maddening part of the Vikings is that Kirk Cousins is going to be the quarterback for a while unless something drastic happens. And the last 2 wins have sort of, because of Dalvin, have made it so that the drastic things aren't going to happen. And I think that's disheartening for Vikings fans.
Ooh, was that a sigh, Flip? when Eric said Kirk Cousins is the quarterback going forward, was that that felt like a heavy sigh? Flip, are you okay?
See, yeah, and I understand what Eric's saying, but I really just don't see it that way from what we're seeing from the Vikings. We tried to do the numbers thing. We tried to do the pass offense. It didn't work, and we saw it. We all predicted that the second Kirk Cousins started throwing interceptions game in, game out, they were going to go back to Dalvin. So this, to me, is almost a statement against Kirk Cousins because they took the ball out of his hands. They're basically saying, you're not good enough. We've got to go with the running back now. And I don't know what that means long term, but it doesn't, like, Kirk Cousins does not benefit from the last 2 weeks. It's not a good look for him.
Myles,
But
what's up, man?
go for it,
My
Myles.
question is, so you talk about Kirk and you talk about the passing offense not being successful, but they, against good teams, were at their best when they were passing the ball. Like, they didn't have a chance to be the Titans or the Seahawks without a good passing offense, right? Like, I'm not saying Kirk didn't throw them out of those games. I'm not saying Kirk isn't the reason they ended up losing those games, but at the same time, he's probably, at least the passing offense in itself, is probably a bigger reason that they were really in those games or had a chance to win those games than it was the run game. And then you see, we know Dalvin's an uber talented player. That's never been in question. The idea that this team should be a run first team, they're really good at running the ball against bad teams. The Packers were going to let the Vikings run the ball against them, even though it ended up losing them the game at the end of the day. They were going to always let the Vikings run the football. They did it last year. They're showing it again this year. The Lions suck. So, I mean, that's just another situation where the Vikings just dominated that game. Not surprising. I mean, they're good at beating bad teams. I'm not calling Green Bay a bad team, but Green Bay let them run the ball stupidly. Like, it wasn't an effective way to game plan, but it's what they've done against the Vikings for years. And they were expecting, they're basically telling Kirk, we know you can't pass against us, so we're not going to let you. And so that's fair to your point. Well, but in terms of beating good teams, they're not really going to beat a good team the way they're set up right now. At least you're not going to see them beat most good teams, I should say. Not
I think that's the bet that they made, right? Like, Kirk's top end play can win in New Orleans in January, right? It's just that top end play is complemented by a series of play that is not, his median play isn't good enough to win 12 games a season the way that Breeze, Brady, Mahomes, Russell, like all those guys, like their median play is going to get you 12 games, a season, and their top end play is Super Bowl caliber. Right. I think Kirk's top end play along with a brilliant defense and a brilliant supporting cast can win a big game, as we've seen it before. But the problem is like everything else, you don't want to commit to it. It does feel a lot like, you guys remember 2015, but in 2015, the Vikings against San Francisco in week 1 tried to run shotgun, 3 wide receivers. And for whatever reason, it was just a struggle for Teddy and company to play well in that game. And almost immediately the Vikings, sort of settled for like a power format, basically like the offense that got, Adrian Peterson by hook or by crook to the rushing title. And like, ultimately I thought that season curbed Teddy's development to a certain degree, but at the same time, it got them enough wins to, win the division. I think the same thing's going on with Minnesota right now, except for the goal is 8-8, which is unfortunate.
Well, can't we say that Kirk has been playing? I guess one of the things I just want to kind of push back a little bit on what Flip said is that on the one hand, yes, they did take the ball out of Kirk's hands. Like in the last 2 games, we've attempted fewer passes combined than we did, say, against like Seattle, and and less than we did against Atlanta. But Kirk has been incredibly efficient when given his opportunities over the last couple of games. I know we don't love passer rating, but these have been 2 of his best games when you look at, the passer rating. And so I guess, yes, he's not throwing up like gaudy yardage totals, but that's something we've always kind of joked and laughed. And it's been a meme around Kirk where he's racking up yards that don't matter in a time of the game when like who actually cares. He's playing efficient for the most part in these last couple of games. Is that enough? Like if Kirk's playing like that, is that enough? Is this formula where Kirk is efficient enough for them to maybe win some games against a team that is better. Okay,
it's not.
Well, I think we're going to disagree here.
Miles's point is the one I think that come back to, which is against bad teams, it absolutely is enough. Unfortunately, the league and one of the reasons I was fading them this year is because in the first half of their schedule included a lot of good teams, and even a team like Atlanta, when they hit on all cylinders, like, you can't play that way. You have to be able to complement the run and the pass together. You have to be able to pass as the first read. And that, they simply, can't do that sometimes. They can't reliably do that. They can some games. They can't
reliably do that. Right. I mean, and that's the thing. We started this season trying to win on the right arm of Kirk Cousins, and it failed miserably.
Well, it's because the run game wasn't as effective because they were playing better teams.
No, they came out passing. He was throwing he threw an interception on the first play of games. He threw interceptions on the first drive of games. If you look at the per drive stats on Football Outsiders, the Vikings, even though Kirk hasn't thrown a pick the last 2 games, the Vikings are still 29th in interception per drive. They tried to do the pass first offense. It did not work, and that's why we are where we are right now. So the question is, 8 games into the season, 3-5, knowing everything we know about this offense, if you're the offensive coordinator of the Minnesota Vikings, what is your best strategy for winning the next football game? That's the tough question.
This team is going to live and die by the run game. They've
what would you do? What would you do?
Well, I would have got rid of Kirk. I wouldn't have extended Kirk. That would have been the first part. Because I know we get a lot of this. Well, it's not always about Kirk, but it is. The solution the philosophy that Zim has does not equate to what Kirk does. And Kirk is not the type of quarterback based off his pay, based off his ability to win you football games without a complimentary run game and everything else around him being perfect. That's essentially what it has been for Kirk. So if you're going to run this philosophy,
and the hard part, go ahead.
I was just going to say, with this philosophy, if you're going to have this type of style of play that we know Zim wants the run game to control the clock, and he wants to have an elite defense. Zim cannot have his elite defense with, putting all the money and all the resources into a defense. If you're going to be paying your quarterback top 6 money, whatever his numbers ended up being, you can't effectively do that because Kirk doesn't overcome the weaknesses you have everywhere else. But you're still going to pay him as if he should. But he can't. So paying him to do that does you no favors. They don't match up to each other at all.
So Eric, again, this brings us back because I was the victim of some Canadian on Canadian crime this week when we were kind of walking through this sort of scenario. Krauser from DN, I was pressing him a little bit just to get his thoughts on like what we should do with Kirk Cousins, because he, like Nick, points out accurately so that if you go to the draft, it's unlikely the quarterback you get in the draft will be overall better than Kirk Cousins. Yeah. Right. And so if you draft someone, they'll probably be worse. Like, more than likely your team's not going to be as good. But as we were talking about before we came on the air, it does in many ways feel like the Vikings are stuck in the middle. I said mediocre. It made people mad. They're a little bit better than mediocre, but they're good for one season. The next season, they're average. Yes, that nets out to above average, slightly so, but it's not very good, and it's not elite, and it's certainly not ever with us really honestly feeling like we have a shot at the Super Bowl at the beginning of the season, or even when we get to the playoffs. We don't really we're like, let's give it a go. Let's maybe win a game, make another game good, and then go home, and we consider that to be successful, right?
The only outlier.
It's like, how do you get out of that cycle?
And the reason 2017 was legitimately a Super Bowl contending year was because they had hit on the right side of variance. The same 11 starters on defense that started week 1 started in the playoffs. And when you looked at the rest of the league, the 1 seed in the NFC was starting a backup quarterback. The Jaguars were starting a backup quarterback in Blake Bortles. And the New England Patriots had kind of like a league below average defense for once, and were kind of smoke and mirrors at the time. I agree with you 100%. I mean, the trickiest part about the Kirk Cousins, era in Minnesota is, Like, think about the Dolphins, right? The Dolphins invested a ton of money in Byron Jones. They invested a ton of money in basically taking New England's front seven and making it their own. Van Noy, Landon Roberts, so on and so forth. And Xavier Howard, they draft Noah Igbenogany in the first round, and then they get Tua. And that game against the Rams, what happened? Well, they got ahead because of some variance and a really good defense, and all Tua had to do was just drive the car, right? And everybody gave him shit because he wasn't good enough, blah, blah, blah. But you know what? Who cares, right? He's making barely anything. And he can because the rest of the team is making all the money, and he's a young quarterback. And then when he comes back against Arizona and balls out, all of that is over expectation. If Kirk plays that game against Arizona, we're all like, well, yeah, but you expect him to. He makes that much. That's like, it's the bar setting, and all of the stuff that the Dolphins do that's awesome. The Devontae Parker contract, wasting money on Jordan Howard and Matt Breida, all that stuff is fine because your quarterback makes barely anything. And I think that's what a young quarterback represents. Now, in Minnesota, it gets thorny because obviously one of the non-Kirk years that you're going to be paying for Kirk when he's not there. But that's the promise of a young quarterback. The slack is so much you're not wound as tightly as you are when you have a veteran.
What I can't I always have trouble articulating this, but it's okay. You don't have to be terrible in order to reset. If you look at your roster and you have the pieces in place to shift towards a new quarterback, then you go ahead and do it no matter what your record is. And that's why 8-8 is okay as long as they're willing to separate from and go in a different direction. What's killing me about the Vikings is they seem like 8-8 is an acceptable result and a reason to keep everything the same, keep that continuity. But
it gives them hope.
But
it gives them hope for the future.
If we go 8-8 in 2020 with Justin Jefferson and Dalvin Cook locked up long term, and Brian O'Neill and Ezra Cleveland, and you even have Riley Reif through 2021, and you have all these young defenders coming on board, and you drop a new quarterback into a roster that has all that promise that went 500 last year, there's a huge amount of upside there, and you've protected your downside too. The cap will be a mess, but you can make the transition rather than having this like all in or wait and see mentality. You make the move when it makes sense.
Don't line up with each other. They don't line up with each other because of what they want. Zimmer's philosophy and how Zimmer wants to win and how he usually does win doesn't line up with what they have.
This Dalvin Cook success is not a reason to keep Kirk. It's a reason to move on from Kirk.
My whole thing is and I'm sure Zimmer's been saying this since before they signed Kirk. The idea is I need to continue to build my defense continuously because defense isn't sustainable. We know that we have our core pieces on offense. Just put in a quarterback that's not going to turn the ball over and screw things up. Zimmer very much hates the quarterback position, and we know it. He's pretty open about it. But now he's also paying his quarterback top 5, whatever the number is, money, elite level money. When his quarterback doesn't
even have Sheldon Richardson anymore,
and he doesn't have Sheldon Richardson, but his quarterback doesn't overcome all the other obstacles that he needs to be successful because of the way his philosophy and his style is to win. And so they don't line up with each other well. So my whole thing has always been, why are you putting Zimmer in this situation if he's the guy that you want to lead the charge, while also trying to say, well, but Kirk's our guy. They don't line up with each other. Like, they might as well hate each other.
Because Kirk stops you from being terrible, which probably stops Spielman from getting fired. I mean, isn't that a good enough reason?
If you inserted a quote unquote worse quarterback than Kirk, they could still be an 8-8 team.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a situation where like
team with anything.
Yeah, I think it's a situation where the creative tension isn't worth it, right? It's sort of like, in baseball, you can say like, okay, this guy's more valuable hitting in the 3 spot, all the time. But if he's not comfortable hitting in the 3 spot, then all the edge is gone, right? Like Zimmer, having a good quarterback could take Zimmer to new heights. but since he's not, since he's not comfortable with it, like it takes the edge away, right? And Bridgewater was always that guy. And I don't know if you guys watched the Carolina game. Bridgewater was amazing again. Like if you get him at 15 million or 20 million, I think his price is probably up after this season. But like, that's something where Zimmer's comfortable with it, and so maybe he's just a better coach as a result, right? Because the edge is there.
And again, it's not just
Call San Francisco and swap quarterbacks and rework Jimmy's contract. I don't know.
Yeah, and
Jimmy G's contract is really easy to get out from under. That's the difference, and why probably San Francisco is not willing to, probably do that. Unfortunately,
well, but they're at a point too, though, that they need to look at something. Jimmy G's not a guy for them. I think Kyle Shanahan's gonna try to make a move this offseason. I mean, he's the type that wants a quarterback that he can build around. Well, Jimmy G's not that guy. I'm not saying Kirk is either, but I think Kyle's worked with Kirk and probably has some belief in him.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing I just want to mention is draft position also tends to be a little overrated in these conversations. You can get a good quarterback anywhere in the first round. You can trade up for that quarterback. It's okay to sacrifice a little bit more as long as you're getting a QB that you believe in and a QB that you have a good evaluation on.
Here's my quick question on that, Flip. If you're going to be bad and you're not a playoff caliber team, what's the point of being mediocre and still bad and not making the playoffs when you could just be bad and get the quarterback at the pick you have, where people want to jump you to get the quarterback you want or covet because of your draft position? That's the only thing I say. There's no point in being meh in a season where you're not going anywhere. So if you can lean into being really bad, at least benefits you to make it easier to find or get that quarterback without having to trade up. What do we say, Jayson? Hashtag team trade back.
If you have you asked me a question.
The hit rate is pretty bad on quarterbacks that are drafted from basically. I mean, Mahomes is maybe an outlier, but 10 to 32. Until Lamar and Mahomes came by, the hit rate is pretty bad in the sense that they do bifurcate, right? That would be my.
So the real question is, are you forcing yourself into a quarterback, or do you have an honest eval on a good quarterback? Because that's 90% of the decision. You could give up 3 first-round picks, and if you get the quarterback right, you're fine. So the whole icing on top, we didn't have to trade up for a quarterback, that's nice, but the main goal is putting yourself in a Kansas City situation where you have an Alex Smith.
Just get the guy.
You get the guy.
100%.
And get the guy. Or even a Carson Wentz, not the best example, but still, it was get the guy. What the Rams did with Jared Goff, they kind of forced themselves into picking that guy number 1 overall. Not the best pick, but they also
wasn't even McVay's pick either. He wasn't even there.
Right. And but they also got a coordinator who's I'm going to build around him and do whatever I can to make the situation work. So the quarterback and the scheme are way more important than how much draft capital you have to get your QB.
The big mistakes are, the sort of in hindsight, obviously, but also just the biggest mistake is taking the next quarterback. So there were 3 first-round quarterbacks in 2011. The Vikings get Ponder, right, at 12.
Right.
And it's okay, crap. Or the other one, which we've seen a lot, and Cleveland is, I think, the biggest culprit here, is trading back into the first round to get your quarterback in the 20s, right? So we saw Manziel, Whedon, Brady Quinn, Paxton Lynch for Denver, even Jay Cutler. Yeah, Jay Cutler for Denver. And EJ Manuel, Josh Freeman for Tampa Bay. The guys in sort of that region have always been kind of well, we have to take a quarterback in this spot. And not to say the second rounders have done all that much better. I mean, when you look at for example, for every Andy Dalton, there's Jimmy Clausen, right? And for every Colin Kaepernick, There's guys that are drafted in that position that aren't good. But it bears to mention that like in that second part of the first round is what people are afraid of, because almost all those guys are reaches.
Right. Again,
Well,
you can tell.
Hold on one sec, Flip, because we are at time, so I want to make sure that we give our man, the most hated man on Vikings Twitter, and maybe Vikings running back agent Twitter, a proper send off, as he does have some more recording, some more radio to do today on Media Tuesday. So Eric, thank you for popping in, making the time, and I look forward to seeing what you drop on the timeline tomorrow to get folks riled up.
Of course, you guys are the best. Looking forward to this weekend. This is one of my favorite things every week. So take care, everybody.
See you, man. Have a good one.
Take it easy.
Yeah.
Sure.
Should have asked him for some betting advice before he left.
We went straight into Kirk. I love it.
I mean, if we got Eric here, we got to. And Nick will pop on maybe, so he can go the other way and, maybe give us some more balanced takes. Let us know why we're all wrong for not jumping in with both feet on the Kirk Cousins. Since, I mean, yeah.
Well, that's the thing is, I understand when someone says the Vikings should have just leaned into Kirk. They should have. If you're going to pay a guy that much money, you're going to have weapons around him, just lean into him. But that's where I just don't understand.
Leaning into him means you have to accept the good and the bad. And Zim's already shown a couple games of the bad, and we're going back to Dalvin.
Well, that's just lean into him means you fix the offensive line.
Well, sure. But at the same time, I also don't understand the idea that you could really be that different in how you believe in building a roster, because clearly Zim and Spielman have a different idea of how they should be building this roster. I think we saw it last year. Obviously, you saw it when they signed Kirk, and I think you're seeing it now. Like when they extended Kirk, Zim did not seem like he wanted to bring Kirk in to start, and now it doesn't seem like he wanted to extend him because of the way he wants to build his team. But Spielman, on the other hand, is looking for the stability at the quarterback position that he's never had. So he's like, well, dude, I'm trying to keep my job. So I need a quarterback that's good enough to keep my job, but you don't seem to care about the position, but you need a defense that's good enough to keep your job. So I don't know. They're weird. It's a weird
fire everybody.
It's a weird situation though, for real.
You're saying fire everybody, which is strange because I know it's still too early for you, but the Vikings look poised to maybe make a run. And you said, don't talk to me until they get to 500. Like that looks realistic. I can see it right there looking at the schedule, because we started off, like Eric was saying, we were looking at the quarterbacks they were going to be facing. And it was like, wow, it's a murderer's row to start the season. Things look a little different now with, Nick Foles coming up next. Who's playing quarterback for the Cowboys? Gilbert,
on Monday
Cooper
night
Rush.
in Chicago. Do you think this team beats Chicago in Chicago on Monday night?
I mean, this is as good a chance as they have in a while. No, Nick Foles. We don't think that we can get some revenge on Nick Foles.
I mean, they've lost to Chase Daniels and Mitch Trubisky, so I.
Oh yeah,
sure.
You're making some very good points. Nick, can you hear us?
I can't. Loud and clear.
Boom. We have Nick in the building. Nick, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, man. Good to see y'all.
Well, you missed all the fun when we talked about your man Kirk Cousins and
Boy.
Yeah, all the reasons why. What did you call it before the show? The Dalton line? Flip?
The Andy Dalton line. It's a Around the NFL podcast. They compare every quarterback in the league and they ask themselves, is this quarterback better or worse than Andy Dalton? Now this was back a couple years ago when Andy Dalton was like your main average quarterback. Now the Andy Dalton line is probably something more like a Carson Wentz line, but the point is, like, you get to rate. It's a quick way to know whether you have a good quarterback or not.
Oh, and so we have a commenter saying they're going to end up making a playoff run week by week, playing themselves out of a quarterback. Yeah, that's where we're at. And so, Nick, Yep, make the argument. Do it. Make the argument. We need you to make the argument, Nick.
You don't need to go 0-16 to draft a quarterback. Patrick Mahomes, the number 10 pick, and the Chiefs traded up for him. You know, the Lamar Jackson, the number 32 pick. You don't need number 1 pick. You know, you just need to take a shot. And the Vikings, what you want, the
Vikings don't take those shots.
You want to have.
I love having Nick on the show.
Thanks, Slim. It's good to be back. You want to have a team that, like, a rookie quarterback can come in and have some success with. You don't want to be the Jets and be a perpetual bottom feeder, because that's not a situation where, like, even Trevor Lawrence is going to be a tall ask. You know, if Trevor Lawrence has like a historically good quarterback season, is worth like 5 wins above replacement. Okay, now it's a 6-win team, so you still got a lot of work to do. You know, so. Look, I think the Vikings should be winning games, because when they win games, it means other guys like Ezra Cleveland, Armand Watts, Jeff Gladney start to break out, and you start to think about maybe we don't need to fill as many spots. And, you know, you always want to improve the quarterback position if you can, but you don't need a number 1 pick to do that. You can always trade up. You can always make a move. There are always guys who fall. Maybe, you know, there's going to be a guy who's available where they pick. So I think the goal should always be as competitive as you can, because intentionally losing games or just having a very bad roster is only going to make it harder to get back into contention.
I love that.
We knew this team wasn't going to be a 3-13 team. As bad as they were to start the season, we knew they were going to be 3-13. That's just not.
So
what
Nick,
this team
because
is good,
you are that side of the debate on this podcast. That is the role that you play. But I think it's a fair position for you to take on, because there are many things you can point to with the quarterback, with Kirk Cousins, to say that, like, he's doing well. Flip said that the last couple of games, as well as Dalvin have played, have actually been an indictment on Kirk Cousins, because they've taken the ball away from Kirk and basically said, we don't trust that you can be the one to be the engine of this offense anymore. I made a counter argument that, you know, Kirk has been somewhat efficient, even though Dalvin has been going off in these games. What are your thoughts on where you see things at this point, you know, midway through the season, with how we need to really think about how we need to win games as we roll things forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think the last couple games, you know, Mike Pettin doesn't care about run defense. So when it comes to, like, the Packers, like, they will literally choose not to defend wide zone runs just so that they can have, like, the backside defensive end crash down on play action. And so, like, if they're not going to defend that gap, you might as well just keep giving Dalvin the ball, because, like, they don't, and their linebackers are so bad at run fits. Like, they just, like, deliberately choose the wrong gaps. It's, like, amazing. So, you know, I don't really think that's taking the ball out of Kirk's hands. I think that's just realizing, like, you can throw to Jair Alexander, or you can have Dalvin Cook run against, like, some of the worst linebackers in the NFL. So I think it's just sort of game situation. You know, you take the matchup. I agree that it's probably says something that, like, they want to be in a position where they're not in a drop back passing game. They want to be able to be multiple. They want to be able to do, you know, rely on the play action passing, and then a lot of run heaviness. And that probably is, to an extent, an indictment on Kirk Cousins, because he's not able to necessarily, you know, extend plays and work necessarily out of a pure shotgun drop back passing game where he's taking deep dropbacks. So that is a valid complaint, I think, and it's something that Kirk Cousins doesn't bring to the table. My thought on Kirk Cousins this year is, look, he's playing about as well as he always does. He's like, the PFF loves him. You know, he's like, I think PFF's number 8 quarterback right now. The garbage time stats have kind of evened out now, because he's played well when it comes to you know, more winnable game situations. His accuracy is still there.
Hey, Flip, he might be the Andy Dalton line based on the stats that David just flashed up there. Dakota,
honestly, I think he pretty much is. Like, we've already had one team decide, like, he's good, but he's not quite good enough. So we're gonna franchise.
I say him and Jimmy G are like.
He is the Andy Dalton. I was wrong.
Like,
it's not Carson Wentz. Carson's way down there.
My thought is, regardless of what you think about Kirk Cousins, a quarterback is so important that you always want to try to be improving. If you have a shot to improve it, go for it. I don't care how good your quarterback is. If you have Patrick Mahomes, but you think there's a prospect out there who could be even better, then, you know, forget Patrick Mahomes. You know, quarterback is so valuable. You can upgrade there. Always go for it. So, I like Kirk. I think he's good enough for a team that is a QB away. I think the Vikings are a lot more than a QB away right now, so I'm not sure about the fit.
So that's the issue. They brought him in because they felt that they were a QB away. Like that's my whole issue is they brought him in because they were a QB away, which every team is technically a QB away unless you're the Chiefs.
The Jets.
The Jets. The Jets, yeah. Like the top tier teams obviously all have elite quarterbacks, and you're always a QB away because you need to upgrade those positions because there's a reason you're not most of the time unless you're the Cowboys when Dak Prescott was healthy. Some of these other teams, Russell Wilson even having an elite team, their team overall sucks. Besides Russell, who keeps them in football games and wins them football games by himself. But yeah, that's been my biggest issue is the Vikings brought in Kirk because they truly felt that they needed more stability and they needed a quarterback. They were a quarterback away because they had a loaded roster, which they did. The issue is how they, like I think Flip and I, we were all talking about this before, is their whole philosophy. What's the point of paying your quarterback the amount of money you need to keep someone like Kirk, to extend someone like Kirk, if the idea is to take the ball out of his hands and to run the ball the way they do with Dalvin Cook? What's the point of paying your quarterback the amount of money you do and handcuff yourself that way if you're not going to lean into the quarterback himself and let him be the do or die type of scenario? Because they want Dalvin Cook to be the guy. They're literally giving him the ball. What is he seeing? How many touches a game? Like 35? He's seeing the ball. Oh,
too many.
It's too many. Exactly. But they're going to keep doing it because it's what's working. But it just shows an indictment to your guys' point that, well, maybe Kirk's not the guy, and maybe Kirk shouldn't have got the extension he got because we don't want the offense to run through him. We want it to run through Dalvin. So again, what's the point of paying your quarterback the amount you do?
Yeah, I mean, if you pull up that graph,
can we take a turn real quick because we do have Nick back, and
yeah.
Nick tends to bring some positivity. It used to be Myles, but Kirk has I don't know what Kirk did to Myles this season, but we got Nick here. So I want to take a turn for the last little bit of the show.
Not even Kirk. It's not even Kirk though, Jason.
Who is it then? Is it Zim?
It's the philosophy.
Okay, that's fair. Nick, tell us some things some positives, some glimmers, some things that we should be excited about right now as Vikings fans. As we roll through the rest of the season, because I feel like we should beat the Bears, and I think in a couple of weeks we're going to be looking at a team that's 500, and there's going to be hope. As much as Flip, Mr. Can't remember it was for all 53 members, but that guy that we used to know. Yeah, tell me what are the things that I should be looking forward to when I look at this team? Because we're winning some games. The blocking hasn't been awful. Ezra Cleveland showing that the Vikings coaches are once again smarter than all of us, having him in there at guard, doing his thing over the last couple of games. Jeff Gladney, all PFF team. Like, Nick, what else? What are the other things that we should be really excited about on this team? Because we know Kirk Cousins might not be the guy, but he's the guy. He's going to be the guy for this foreseeable future. So who else should we look at and be excited about the way they've been developing over the course of this season?
Yeah, it's crazy. When we were like 1-5, like this roster looked it looked like a dumpster fire. But now that we've won a couple games, you've seen a couple guys break out. Gladney had legitimately like a very, very top tier cornerback performance. It's one of the best we've seen in a while. He wasn't necessarily going up against like Julio Jones or anything, but he was very sticky in coverage. He fires down on like screens or like swing passes immediately. He doesn't miss tackles. He's really good in run support. He's not afraid to get in there, get physical. He's really, really good at making plays on the ball. You saw that when he forced that incompletion on that sort of intermediate out route last week. So he had like a legitimately phenomenal game. He has all the traits that like would project well to be like the starting slot corner with versatility to play outside. So, that's awesome when you have your first round corner, like coming out, having a great game. That's awesome. So that projects very well. And he's also like a high upside player because he's such an elite athlete. So that's really exciting to see. It makes you excited about his future. I think Armin Watts showed a lot. He had a really rough, like his PFF grade first 4 games was like in the 50s and the 40s. It was like awful. Well, his last 4 games were like in the 80s and 70s. So he's like, I think he's been a top 3 graded Vikings defender 3 out of the last 4 weeks. So he's played really well. And that's on pretty significant snaps too. Like both as a run defender. He's got sort of the bulk and he's able to take on double teams in the run game. He's able to hold his gap against stretch zone plays. But he's also really good as a pass rusher. So those guys are starting to emerge. You're seeing some other guys. And then in terms of long-term hope, like literally half the defense is on injured reserve or COVID reserve or whatever. Like, I think you can honestly make the argument that like the guys that are on reserve right now, that defense is better than the current. Like if you take Danielle Hunter, Michael Pierce, Anthony Barr, Mike Hughes, and Holton Hill, all of whom are on reserve, and all the other backups like Cam Smith or whoever, the other like rotational guys, that defense might be better than the current one. So I don't know. I mean, there's reason to think this team will bounce back next year. And obviously the other thing for this year is the schedule gets so much softer. You know, you're going from 2 games of Aaron Rodgers and former MVP winners, Russell Wilson, to like Gardner Minshew and whoever Dallas has at quarterback right now. So things are going to get easier. It doesn't guarantee wins or anything, but things are going to get easier.
All right. So Flip, talk to me about it. Myles, we know Myles is not feeling Monday night, Soldier Field, Nick Foles. Talk to me about this matchup, Flip. How do you feel about it? Are you confident going in?
Super Bowl MVP, Nick Foles. Put some respect.
My fault. I'll put some respect on that man's name. Flip, how you feeling about this matchup?
I love the Vikings and their 2021 prospects right now. When is the last time we went into a Bears game thinking that we weren't going to win it?
I mean, we never think we're going to win it.
You never think we're going to win it?
Wait, David had to go and put that up right up on the screen. 4-16 in Chicago.
4-16. Every time we play the Bears, we think it's a winnable game, and then it's like BS on Halloween, or it's some like, oh, Anthony Harris breakout game, but we still lost by 15 points. It's, man, get
2018 to get into the playoffs.
To beat
a shitty Bears team at home to go to the playoffs. You couldn't do it.
You can't do it. Every single time you play the Bears, it's like, oh, this is a winnable game. And it doesn't happen. So maybe I'm looking too far in the past. Maybe I need to look forward. You want me to look forward? I keep on saying, talk to me about the playoffs when we get to 500. You want to get to 500, you got to beat the Bears. Only way you do that right now is hope Dalvin Cook doesn't get hurt. So, like I said last week, Jayson, if Dalvin Cook stays healthy, then I think we're going to win.
Okay. I like that. How about you, Myles? What are your thoughts outside of the fact that, you know, we never beat the Bears? If you're just looking at this game, analyzing the matchups, how do you feel about how the Vikings we've seen, not just in the last 2 weeks, but over the entire course of the season, match up against this Bears team, whom most are calling paper tigers? Like, their record is okay, but like no one thinks they're any good. So like, how do we actually match up?
The Bears have a weird situation, weird roster build. I feel like they're trying to build the roster similar to the way the Packers are, in that they have one elite receiver and then they don't care about anything else around him. They have a worse run game and a worse quarterback, but they want to
put some respect on Darnell Mooney's name.
You're right. My bad. Hey, he might go off. But no, like but he was a 5th round pick. We don't need to go there. But they have a strong defense. They want to be successful in the run game, which they've been like horrendously bad. Like, I don't even know if I'd put it on David Montgomery, which that's another point, is most running backs make their offensive lines better, right? Poor David Montgomery doesn't do that, and he also doesn't have a good offensive line, so they don't mesh well together. So I think the Vikings, if they can do well against the run, which I expect them to do, just because the Bears haven't been good in the run game, I think if they can just contain Allen Robinson and not let Darnell Mooney get deep, I think they have a good chance on defense to be, overall successful. They've been trending up. To Nick's point, I'm a big Jeff Gladney fan, so I think him trending upwards is positive because he's the type of player who seems like, when that confidence is up, that guy's gonna be really good. Like, he's the type of player. It's all a mindset thing for him. And so I think once him starting to figure out, there's some of that like Jair Alexander. I don't think he has quite that upside, but I think he has that type of mentality, that like dog mentality that, I'm not going to let the guy in front of me beat me. and which is what you want at cornerback. So I think if he can, maybe match him up against Allen Robinson, double team Allen Robinson and kind of do what they've been doing with the cover 2 shells and making sure they don't get beat deep. On the offensive side of the ball, I mean, they've let guys like Khalil Mack and Akeem Hicks destroy them the last 3 seasons. So I think that's always a question mark there. That's always a worrisome situation. But I think with the way they've been running the football, we know that they're going to focus on the run game. It comes down to Kirk Cousins. I hate going back to this, but it really is going to be about Kirk Cousins and how the pass game can succeed against a stingy Bears defense. Because we know the Bears are going to hyper-focus on Dalvin Cook, as they should. The offense runs through Dalvin Cook. So guess what you should do? Not let Dalvin Cook be the reason you lose. Because if you're going to lose the Vikings are at a point where you're playing a team, they'd rather not lose to Dalvin Cook. They'd rather let Kirk Cousins try and beat them than Dalvin Cook, because they know that if Dalvin Cook gets going, he's the type of guy that's going to break games open. Kirk's been iffy with that. So I think we're going to see a little bit more of the focus on the run game, focus on Dalvin Cook. But how does the offense respond to that? What's the weather look like in Chicago? A lot of these questions I don't know the answer to, but it'll be fun. It'll be fun to watch, but it's prime time, Monday night, on the road. It's hard to be optimistic, but I do think they have a chance if things kind of swing their way. That's kind of where I'm at.
This is the best defense they've played since Indianapolis.
Talk to me, Nick. How you feeling about this one? And yeah, with that point that Flip just made about us playing a team that actually plays defense again, what are your thoughts on how this one goes?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think the betting markets are correctly setting this one right, that the Vikings, even though it's in Soldier Field, the Vikings should be favored because the Vikings are just a better team, better coach certainly, and I think they're better at the more important positions like quarterback and the receiver group as a whole. I think Allen Robinson, you can make the argument, is the best of the bunch, but I think when it comes to Jefferson, Thielen, and the other receiving options the Vikings have, I take the Vikings there, and that's what's usually predictive. If you've got a good defense going up against a good offense, usually good offenses, are the more predictive side of the field. So I get the math of why the Vikings are favored here, but in my heart of hearts, I just know everything is conspiring against us. So I don't know. I think Miles' point is right. I think this is the Bears are going to be very focused and keyed in on stopping the run, stopping Dalvin Cook, and getting to a point where their pass rush can pin their ears back, because they know, we've seen it before, Riley Reef cannot handle Khalil Mack. I don't really think Brian O'Neill can handle Khalil Mack one-on-one on a deep, third down. So you want to avoid those situations. So it'll be interesting. I think having Dalvin Cook helps Kirk Cousins though, because I don't think we're going to be seeing a lot of too high shells going forward very much, just because nobody wants to face Dalvin Cook, down a man in the box or whatever. So I think there are reasons to think the Vikings should be able to do something attacking downfield. I know Kubiak has a lot of success doing that.
Oh no!
I don't know.
I think we're losing you. Yeah, I think we're losing you, Nick. Nick, can you go stand next to the router?
I'm sorry. Am I breaking up?
Nope. Yep. We have a frozen Nick now. But I feel like we got the gist of what he was saying. Bears defense not going to let Dalvin beat them, and our tackles can't hold up if we get stuck in pass rushing situations. Is that feel like a fair synopsis? Also, Director David, can we mute Nick remotely?
I can mute myself.
I mean, we can mute you, Flip, but can we mute Nick?
Oh.
I feel like we're good. He's frozen, but we can't hear the feedback. And everyone seems to have a similar take on how this one's going to go. It's going to come down to Kirk Cousins.
That synopsis by Nick went exactly how the Vikings play against the Bears. Just like you think it's going to be all good, and then it just falls all apart, man. It just falls apart.
Oh, and we got the weather.
We got the weather.
Okay. That change your analysis at all? It's gonna be a little chill. Nothing we can't handle though.
Yeah, no, long term, I think that the Vikings, I'm happy that they're awake now. They're competitive. They look like they're showing up in these games. I mean, it's only been 2 games in a row where they've shown up, but that's been great. The Kirk Cousins turnovers have subsided. That's also a really positive sign. I never like to have to assume that they are going to win all of the remaining winnable games on the schedule just to make the playoffs. But Dalvin Cook is a horse you can ride, and he's valuable, and he's outplaying his contract right now. So let's see what they got. Let's see if they can keep that guy going, keep him healthy, and get another division W.
All right. I like it. Myles, any final words? What are you going to be looking for in this game? What's your key?
I'm kind of with you guys. My key is the offense. I think the offense is the key here, because we know what they want to do, but can they continue to do it and be successful with it? The Bears, like to Flip's point, the Bears are a better defense than what we've seen the last few weeks. Can they overcome a good defense? Because we haven't seen it. We haven't seen them do it in a while. So I just want to see if that's something that they can be successful in on the road on Monday night against a division rival.
All right. And that is it. As always, viewers, thanks for coming on and joining us this evening. Listeners, thanks for listening.
Thank you.
And thanks for riding with us through all the ups and downs and technical ins and outs that comes with this live show. And we will talk to you soon. Have a good one.
Skol
Producer
Vikes.
David.
Thank you for watching or listening. As always, if you like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. And if you're listening to the podcast, please rate us on your favorite aggregator. Skol, everybody.